What does our favorite game look like on the other side? What happened to Yarnaby? Could he have survived? We will look at interesting bugs that can happen. And also in full growth, look at Huggy Wuggy. Will be scary. Just look at these shots from Poppy Playtime 4. We've already released a similar video, and now we'll take a look at some new interesting details that were hidden by the developers. We'll see a lot of cool things, and I think you'll definitely like this video. And the first thing we should start with is the toy shelter, where you can immediately find an interesting secret. In one of the cabinets, Mommy Longlegs will be hiding. I'm sure you didn't expect to see her here, just like I didn't. It's impossible to notice her in the game just like that, and look at how she looks exactly the same as she did in the previous part of the game. The next secret is also related to the toy shelter. Let's fly a bit. And here we can spot this interesting message, "He is everywhere." This is probably a reference to Dr. Sawyer. That would make a lot of sense. Here's another room that was hidden from the player's eyes. We can see many interesting books with various covers, and if we fly through, everything will get really interesting with all kinds of references. Write in the comments if you'd be interested in seeing what's inside these books and what they might be about. As you can see, there are indeed a lot of them, and they are all different, giving us some references to previous characters. In this shot, we can notice ventilation that leads, and in the room with books, it's impossible to get into it just yet, but I think the developers are already thinking about it. They definitely didn't prepare all of this just for nothing. At the center of the location behind the wall, we'll find our old good friend Doy, whom we already saw and studied. He enters the room after triggering the event when we enter the shelter and starts telling us all about everything. After this short conversation, of course, he disappears just like we saw in the original part, and he simply vanishes here. Now let's move on to another scene with him. As you may know, or maybe you didn't know, he has teeth, and they are always with him. They are just hidden inside his head and are used only for specific purposes and in certain scenes. After the shelter, we'll head to another catacomb. When we get to the end, we'll see through the bars some very beautiful landscapes, but if we fly to take a closer look, it turns out that it's just pictures. While wandering, we'll come across iron doors, and through them, Yarnaby will come out. But if we fly a bit further, we'll see that there's not just one, but two of them. It's strange why there are two. You can leave your guess in the comments. But as soon as we step on the trigger, the gate is immediately activated, allowing him to exit, and then he runs in the opposite direction. Also, if you reload the checkpoint in this place, you can catch some really funny bugs. Yarnaby either breaks and doesn't exit his cage, or something else happens, which is pretty funny, to be honest. Apparently, he's feeling really bad, and he's taken away in a way that doesn't make much sense. But well, it's probably just an oversight. Also, not far from this spot, there's another bug related to a reflection in the glass, and something really strange happens. Near this door, when we press the buttons, Yarnaby will appear out of nowhere behind us, and the chase will begin. After that, at the end of the chase, we jump over the gap, but our friend doesn't have much luck. He jumps and hits the hook. As you may already know, this was in the original part of the game, and after that, he catches fire from a nearby boiler. In the original game, this scene looked really cool, and honestly, it looked pretty dramatic. If we fly to where he fell, we can notice that he looks pretty good overall, just a little scorched. We can conclude that he might be alive, but I think we'll find out more in the next episodes. Maybe he'll appear in the next part of the game with some injuries. Well, if we restart from the checkpoint, we'll see that he froze and can't do anything to us, just standing still. On the way to the doctor, we can spot a skeleton, but we can't really get a good look at it without extra lighting. As we can see, it's some kind of gas mask, which you've already seen in previous episodes, and it looks pretty decent. Maybe this was a factory worker from Playtime. Maybe we'll find out more about it later in the game. But in the doctor's location, where there are many NPCs, there's really nothing much, so we can move on to the next moment when we need to return to the shelter, and on our way there, Doy will appear behind us. He looks very tense and seems to be trying to tell us something. This was also in the original game, and to be honest, the moment was pretty intense. It's unclear where he came from and what he wants from us. He probably wants to get somewhere across this bridge, but he's having no luck, and we'll have to help him as quickly as possible. Here, we can see some destruction. Doy becomes really shaken and goes somewhere into this pipe, and after that we lose sight of him. When we reach the shelter, we see Doy again. Well, under the map, the mutated Doy is already hiding. For now, he doesn't show any signs of life, but as soon as we activate the trigger, we can see him moving and getting ready to crawl out of the pipe. Now let's move on to the scene itself and see what it looks like from another angle. I think you'll find this really interesting. He starts breaking everything, and everything is falling apart. As you already know, his second entity will appear now, and it will chase us the whole time while we're cleaning up. Look, they're switching places and the monster Doy begins to wake up. From the outside, it doesn't look like it does in the scene, but that's what makes it even more interesting. He hatches right out of the debris and is ready to attack us. As you remember, the long chase from him begins now and he'll try to catch us with all his might, but in the end, he won't succeed. This is what he looks like. If I saw something like this at night, I'd be terrified. He screams so loudly that you'd freeze in place and not be able to move. Here you can see him teleporting, and he's already ready to attack us. If, by some miracle, you happen to get caught here again, you'll notice the regular Doy in the middle of the debris. However, if you activate the trigger again, you can notice the monster waking up, and for some reason our character suddenly shrinks by 3 times, and it's honestly very strange. He looks incredibly fast. On the way to the battle location, Doy will appear in front of us a few more times, but passing through this in the regular game we wouldn't notice. This is what it will look like from the outside. Here you can see how it looks from different sides. He appears along our entire path. He appears in specific places, then disappears as you can see, and tries in every way to harm us. Next we'll break down this huge location where we fought the monster and it looks pretty great, but the upper floors are poorly detailed because they simply weren't used, and they decided not to waste extra resources on them, so they look like they were made out of clay. Here, we can notice that all these rooms are empty and there's nothing inside as expected. The windows definitely look broken, but behind these windows, it's empty, and there's nothing there. If we fly very far beyond the map, we can notice something interesting, some items that later teleport to the main location. If the player gets too far from Doy, he will dig underground and then pop up nearby. However, if you look at this action from the side, it becomes clear that he's just using teleportation. During the boss run on this location, there's also a chance that a bug like this might occur. At some point, the character just flies up and there's nothing you can do about it. It looks very exciting because from above, Playtime Company looks very unusual. As you can see, here you can also see everything beyond the map. At the end of this location, as usual, we'll have a scene. Here we can see an enraged Doy. He's shouting and blaming both us and Poppy for the damage to his shelter. He's obviously very unhappy about all this and wants to take revenge on us somehow, but he understands that nothing can help him now, and after this we can notice the scene of his death. I'm sure you've seen this scene and it's probably one of the most popular ones. But now let's look at it from another angle and see how he gradually freezes because that's his weakest side. At this moment he's in a lot of pain. He's shouting and in the end apologizes to us, saying that it wasn't him who said all of this or did all of this. As you know, there are 3 personalities in him. Probably the most reasonable one we've been communicating with all this time is the real Doy. As you can see, he's repenting before us, but only after lying down and being powerless to do anything about it. It seems that the other 2 personalities in him are already gone. Right under this door, we can see a button with a note from the developers saying that they've set a limit on interacting with this button so that it isn't pressed too often. And here we are at the scene with Kissy Missy. From this side and under good lighting, we can see how everything was done, and now we notice how she loses her arm. Now, if we go back to her after our fall, we'll notice that she's in really bad shape. She's sitting in the ventilation, and we can see that the textures are stretched right to her lying arm. And now let's move on to the last scene I'd like to show you today. As you can guess, this is the final scene, just without the doors. I think you all wanted to get a closer look at Huggy Wuggy. For now, we still don't see him, but he'll be appearing very soon, and guys, I can assure you that he's going to look very creepy. And just look at him without the doors. It really seems like he's pieced together from parts, and I think in the next season he's definitely going to show up, and we'll see what kind of new monster it will be. I hope it's him. In this form, he really looks like he's been a bit roughed up at the factory. He looks very interesting, and I think you'll like him too. I think that's everything I wanted to show you guys today. Don't forget to share your theories in the comments, and also don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.